repaste on the Dell 7577 is likely going to take you upwards of 2 hours to complete. So here's the edited version from start to finish. Obviously, let's start with the bottom panel. We'll pry up on this and remove it. Next, unplug the battery cable. After that, we are going to start backing out many screws. Across all of every single screw hole on this whole entire laptop will be labeled the screw type and size. So you should have no problem making sure that the right screws get put back in the right places when it comes time to reassembly. Next, the gray back plate. We're going to unscrew all 4 of those. Lightly pry away on the ends, relieving the clip, and with a nice tug, pull it right off. Next, we're going to remove the battery, 56 watt hour, and the 2 final screws underneath the gray plate that we just pulled off. After that, we're just going to start working as many screws as possible, including the 4 right below the battery, the 4 on the hard drive. Remove the hard drive and set it out of the way. Next, and this is one of the more tricky parts, you're going to have to slowly start prying the solution apart. Afterwards, every single ribbon cable that is tied to the motherboard, remove. Now at this point, if you need to change your pants, I understand. There's a little piece of tape that covers the keyboard ribbon cable, which is the fat one to your right. Just set that off to the side. And as you're pulling away at the ribbon cables, gently lift up on the chassis, making sure that there is nothing further tied to it. After that, there's going to be some silver screws, around half a dozen, 3 per side. This is what's ultimately holding the motherboard to the plastic housing. After that, you're going to remove the fan cables, turn it back over, remove the M.2 drive, and remove the Wi-Fi card. Now let's get on to the heatsink. There are 6 screws. Go ahead and remove all 6. Give the heatsink a little tug, and bada bing bada boom, there she is. After that, we're going to take some time to isopropyl alcohol all of the thermal paste, remove all of it, and make it squeaky clean. Thermal Grizzly Cryonaut, of course. A little dab will do ya on both the CPU and GPU. Next, I'm going to take these little cables here for the fans, pull them down, and guide them through the other side of the motherboard. Then I'm going to take one hand, hold the heatsink and motherboard in place as I put down all 6 screws in their position, turn everything over, plug the fans back in. There's the ribbon cable, feed this back through the chassis, and start your reassembly. You'll kind of have to deal with the power cable right here, as you can see. If you miss this step, you're going to have a hard time trying to compress this chassis together. You need to find this little tiny L-shaped bracket to feed this power cable back into its place. It may be hard to miss at first, but when you try to reinstall the motherboard back in the chassis, it's not going to fit right, and this is what will be holding you up. So take your time, get that back into position. It'll just add an extra minute or 2 to the progress. Well worth your time. Goes together pretty well at that point. Now there's a little bit of a ribbon cable issue we have right here, so I'm just going to go ahead and give that a nice little pull right back through where it belongs. Little things like this are going to happen from time to time. Next, there's a little metal plate and some screws that you had removed just a little while ago, and we are just about ready to have the motherboard completely fastened to the chassis. Any little cables at that point need to plug them in, and make sure that the wiring is sitting nicely in its channel. After this, we have the display cable. We're going to go ahead and secure that right back into place. Again, making sure the wires are in the channels as necessary. Going to feed any sort of ribbon cables that may have gotten lost underneath the chassis and start reinstalling those ribbon cables along with the piece of tape. Bada bing, bada boom. Going to reinstall the Wi-Fi card at this point. Just a little random plug there that needs to get put back into place. The CMOS battery is now plugged back in. M.2 drive installed. And the little beauty cover plate that's going over the display port along with the hard drive finished. So far so good. Remaining screws that are going to go underneath the battery. Now we will install the battery. Finish up with all remaining screws for it. Now at this point I have the laptop in my hands and I'm slowly squeezing the edges, making sure that it clicks back into place. Now I'm running all of the screws back in, including the top part, plugging in the battery, reinstalling the belly of the beast, which was a lot more challenging than it should have been. Sorry for the senior moment. And now, when you open this thing up, what we've done is we've unplugged the battery, we've removed the CMOS. It's going to go through 4 boot ups. The fans are going to whir real loud. Then it's going to power back down. It's going to do that twice, and then it's going to do a smaller version of that twice. So at this point, you're probably freaking out, but you just have to remember you likely did everything right. It's a daunting task, this job is, but it's also pretty much plug and play. As you're taking things apart and putting things back together, there's really nothing where you could, oh, shoot, I shouldn't have plugged this into here, and instead I plugged this into there. There's really none of that. Everything is set right where it needs to be. You just, oh, plug this in. Oh, plug this in. So when you turn this on for the first time and you're crapping purple Twinkies, it's going to take some time before it comes back on. So again, it would power on, the fans would go blazing, it would do this for about 10 seconds, and then it would shut back off. And then about 5 seconds later, it would do that again, and then it would shut back off. At this point, you can start to grab a cloth and wipe the sweat off of your forehead, as it's going to do this 2 more times, but a more subtle and smaller version. And now we are greeted with an information stating that there's been something that's been reset. We're in our BIOS. In other words, if you got to this point, everything is working. So congratulations. If you decided to do this job, you're a very brave person. Feel free to utilize this if you need to for reference. But to be honest with you, it's really not worth your time. Not only is this a huge pain in the buns to do, but the thermal improvement was between 3 and 5 degrees Celsius on a laptop that really didn't need it to begin with. So that's going to do it for now. This is Bob of All Trades. Peace out.